Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. My name is Jahan MACADATO. I will be reporting Chapter 4 of the Law on Sales, the obligations of the vendor. So we have three different sections under the Chapter 4 of the Law on Sales, and specifically two subsections under Section 3, which is the conditions and warranties. But my report would be specifically on warranty against hidden defects or encumbrances upon the thing sold. I will begin with Article 1564 until Article 1572. So I will begin my report with this article, Article 1564. This is basically the continuation of the previous articles mentioned under subsection 2 of section 3, which is the warranty against hidden defects of or encumbrances upon the thing sold. So in Articles 1561 until 1563, these were the articles that introduces us on how would we better understand this warranty? How would we know when the defect is important, when it is hidden, and the requisites for warranty against hidden defects? Now, the provision goes for Article 1564, an implied warranty or condition as to the quality or fitness for a particular purpose may be annexed by the usage of trade. So this focuses on the effect of usage on trade. Now, a warranty as to the quality of a fitness or for a particular purpose may be attached by usage to a contract containing no express provision in regard to warranty, though in the absence of usage, there would be no warranty implied. So that's the reason why it is important whether there is a usage on trade or not, because if there is no usage, then basically the parties would not really express their intention. So the usage is relied on the purpose of showing the intention of the parties. For Article 1565, it focuses on the merchantability of goods sold by sample. The provision goes, in the case of a contract of sale by sample, if the seller is a dealer in goods of that kind, there is an implied warranty that the goods shall be free from any defect, rendering them unmerchantable, which would not be apparent on reasonable examination of the sample. For Article 1565, I've mentioned it talks about the merchantability of goods sold by sample. So before that, a little explanation lang with the provision. It's actually self-explanatory, di ba? Kasi it's stated na sa case ng contract of sale by sample, if yung seller natin is also a dealer in goods of the same kind of goods that is being sold by the seller, then meron tayong implied warranty that that goods shall be free from any defect rendering them unmerchantable. So we have two different cases where the sample is not merchantable or where the sample is subject to latent defect. So for the former one, as a general rule, all the buyer is entitled to in case of seller contract to sell by sample is that the goods be like the sample as well. So nagre-rely yung goods natin sa pagsisell natin by sample. So he has no right to have the goods merchantable if the sample which he has is inspected is not merchantable. Now, second one is where the sample is subject to latent defect. In this case, it is where the defect in the goods is of such a character that the inspection will not reveal it. So in the case of a sale by sample, if the sample is subject to a latent defect, take note ha, yung kanina, when it is the sell by sample is merchantable, in this one, yung sell by sample natin is actually subject to a latent defect. Then the buyer reasonably relies on the seller's skill or judgment. Then the buyer is entitled hindi lang simply sa goods like tulad ng sell by sample natin, but to goods like those which the sample seems to represent. So yun nga, kung ano yung sample natin, ganun din yung sa selling of goods natin. So that is merchantable goods of that kind and character. Moving on to Article 1566, which talks about the effect of ignorance of vendor hidden defects. So, sa previous articles under this subsection 2, it was mentioned sa Article 1561 na to when can we know that when the defect is important and when it is hidden, ano yung mga requisites for warranty against hidden defects. Now, this Article 1566 is yung effect ng ignorance of vendor sa mga hidden defects. So, the provision goes, the vendor is responsible to the vendee for any hidden faults or defects in the things sold, even though he was not aware thereof. Now, this provision shall not apply if the contrary has been stipulated and the vendor was not aware of the hidden faults or defects in the things sold. Basically, yung ignorance ng vendor, even if he has no idea or he is clueless, let's say, wala siyang alam of the hidden defects, he is still responsible or he is still liable sa kanyang vendee for any hidden faults or defects in the things sold. So in other words, good faith cannot be availed of as a defense by the vendor. Hindi matatakasan ng vendor yung liability niya and responsibility niya sa vending niya with the case of having those hidden faults or hidden defects. But the parties may actually provide otherwise in their contract, provided that the vendor acted in good faith, that is, he was unaware of the existence of the hidden fault or defect. So, regardless na, let's say, hindi talaga alam ng vendor, but he acted in good faith, that can be included in their contract existing, and pwede naman na i-defend ng vendor kanyang sarili for him to say na he is actually not guilty of this or not aware of these hidden defects or hidden faults. So, actually, there were changes in adapting such doctrines sa ating Article 1566 with regards to effect of ignorance of vendor of hidden defects. Well, before, the implied warranty of quality was not recognized and the rule was then caveat emptor, which means buyer beware. Yun dati yung ina-adapt natin. But our old civil code of the Philippines, following the Roman law, rejected the maxim caveat emptor. So that's the reason why the doctrine of caveat vendor was adopted. This was adopted in accordance with which the vendor is liable to the vendee for any hidden faults or defects in the things sold, even though he was not aware thereof. That was stated in Article 1585 sa previous natin, but now in Article 1566 of our Civil Code of the Philippines. Now, this doctrine actually is based on the principle that a sound price warrants a sound article. With respect to third persons, however, the rule of caveat emptor still applies. So it is still existing at some point. Thus, one who buys real property without checking the vendor's title where persons other than the vendor are in possession takes all the risks and losses consequent to such failure in case the vendor's title is defective. So at least, medyo not fully liable or responsible dito yung vendor given the fact that the vendor trusted the vendor without even checking yung title ng ating vendor. Now for Article 1567, which is the alternative remedies of the buyer to enforce warranty. The provision goes, in the cases of Articles 1561, 1562, 1564, 1565, and 1566, the vendee may elect between withdrawing from the contract or demanding a proportionate reduction of the price with damages in their case. This article allows the vendor to have alternative remedies of the buyer to enforce warranty. Now, the vendee has the option. So, there are two options given for the vendee. Either to withdraw from the contract between his vendor or to demand a proportionate reduction of the price with the right to damages in either case. Now, the first is actually known as action redhibitoria, yung unang option natin. While the second option, which is the reduction of the price with yung rights ng damages in either case, it is known as the action quanti minores. Now, the same right is given to the vendee in the sale of animals with prohibitory defects. So, these two options are given, it is freely given to the vendee. So, may free will siya to choose any of those, either to withdraw or to demand a proportionate reduction of price. So, these are the options or the alternative remedies of the buyer para mag-enforce ng warranty. Moving on to Article 1568, which talks about the effect of loss of things sold on account of hidden defects. Now, the provision goes, if the things sold should be lost in consequence of the hidden faults, and the vendor was aware of them, he shall bear the loss and shall be obliged to return the price and refund the expenses of the contract with damages. Now, if he was not aware of them, he shall only return the price and interest thereon and reimburse the expenses of the contract which the vendee might have paid. So basically, ito yung mga cases in which the loss, it is the cases of losing the things sold on account ng mga hidden defects. For Article 1568, there are two different cases on the effect of loss of things sold on account of hidden defects. Of course, first case is when the vendor is aware of hidden defects, and then second, when he is not aware of the hidden defects. Now, for the former one, if the vendor was aware of the hidden defects in consequence of which the thing sold was lost, yung vendor is liable and responsible for that loss because at the first place, he already acted in bad faith. In such case, yung rights na given to the vendee are the following. Pwede niya ma-reimburse or recover yung binayad niya sa product. Second, yung expenses of the contract between the vendee and the vendor, and then of course, the damages. So, pwede yun bawiin ng vendee sa kanyang vendor if only if the vendor is aware of the hidden defects. Now, the second case is pag hindi alam. The vendor is fully unaware of any hidden defects or faults. Now, in this case, yung vendor is obliged to return the price of the product at saka yung interest niya, that's the second one, and then of course, the expenses of the contract if already paid by the vendee. But, even though na he is obliged to return those, he is not liable or responsible sa damages because at the first place, he is not guilty of acting bad faith kasi nga, diba, hindi niya alam or he is totally clueless of any hidden defects or faults. So, in that case, hindi siya guilty for bad faith. Article 1569 talks about the effect of loss of defective things sold. The provision goes, if the thing sold had any hidden fault at the time of the sale and should thereafter be lost by a fortuitous event or through the fault of the vendee, the latter may demand of the vendor the price which he paid less the value which the thing had when it was lost. If the vendor acted in bad faith, he shall pay damages to the vendee. Previously, on Article 1568, it mentioned two different cases sa perspective ng vendor for with regards to the hidden defects. So, first case was, diba, yung aware siya about the hidden defects, and then the second one is when he was, pag clueless yung vendor about the hidden defects. But both cases still made the vendor liable and responsible to return the price paid by the vendee, also the expenses of the contract made between the two, and also the interest. In this case naman, if yung thing sold had no hidden defects, like absolutely wala nung pag-purchase ng vendee, it's lost through if nawala siya through a fortuitous event or through the fault of the vendee, of course, it is to be borne by the vendee. However, still oblige ang vendor to return the price paid by the vendee, but less the value of the thing at the time of its loss in case where mayroong mga hidden defects existed. In other words, in this article, the vendor is still made liable for his warranty. So, wala pa rin matatakasan yung vendor sa sa kanyang warranty. So, he's still liable and responsible for any damages or unexpected hidden defects. Now, the difference between the price paid for the thing, yung sa time ng pagbili niya, na literally walang hidden defects, and the value at the time of the loss represents the damage suffered by its vendee, and at the same time, the amount with which the vendor enriched himself sa expense of the expenses niya. If the vendor acted in bad faith, of course he will be liable for damages. Example, Mr. S sold to B a vessel for 5 million pesos. Now, the defects of the construction of the vessel were hidden and concealed and were unknown kay Vendi, and an official inspection was made. Now, to make this vessel seaworthy, an investment of 500,000 pesos for repairs was already necessary. If through the fault of the Vendi, the vessel was burned, now, vendor is nevertheless bound to return the purchase price of the actual amount na pagbili ng vendi, which is 5 million pesos. Mababawasan ito ng 4,500,000 pesos, which is the value of the vessel at the time of the loss. Bali, lumiit na yung value ng product kasi nabawas dun yung investment for repairs, di ba? Yung repairs expense, 500,000. Binawas na yon sa actual cost ng product. Kasi ang mangyayari is magkaiba na yung presyo ng product noong binili siya and by the time na it was lost. For Article 1570, this talks about the warranty in judicial sales. The provision goes, the preceding articles of this subsection shall be applicable to judicial sales, except that the judgment debtor shall not be liable for damages. Now, in a judicial sale, it is not really the sheriff who sells, but yung judgment debtor. Hence, the provisions regarding warranty are also applicable to judicial sales. However, since he is forced to sell, then there can be no liability for any damages. So for Article 1571 naman, this tackles about limitations of action. The provision goes, actions arising from the provisions of the preceding 10 articles shall be barred after 6 months from the delivery of the thing sold. Now, the action for rescission of the contract or yung reduction ng pag-purchase ng price prescribes 6 months from the date of the delivery of the thing sold. Now, this means that yung action shall be barred unless brought within the said period. So, may limitation yung action natin, di ba? Only yung action lang natin for rescission or yung pag-reduce ng price natin shall be barred after 6 months. So, dapat yung situation where the vendee is allowed for recovering or for at least requesting or demanding for the reduction of price, dapat within 6 months yun from the date of the delivery of the things sold. Now, on to our last article for my report, Article 1572, which tackles about the sale of 2 or more animals together. The provision goes, if 2 or more animals are sold together, whether for a lump sum or for a separate price for each of them, the redhibitory defect of one shall only give rise to its redhibition and not that of others, unless it should appear that the vendee would not have purchased the sound animal or animals without the defective one. The latter case shall be presumed when a team, yoke, pair, or set is bought, even if a separate price has been fixed for each one of the animals composing the same. Now, when 2 or more animals have been sold at the same time and the redhibitory defect is in one or some of them but hindi lahat, yung general rule dito is that the redhibition will not affect the others without it. So, kibale, both has to exist, diba? Not only one. Now, the exception is when it can be shown by the vendee that he would not have purchased the sound ones without those which are actually defective. Such intention need not to be established by the vendee, but it shall be presumed when a team, yoke, pair, or set is bought unless the vendor proves the contrary. This should be noticed that under this Article 1572, it is immaterial whether the price has been fixed for a lump sum for all the animals or for a separate price for each. An example of this case is when vendor sold vendee 2 Carabaos for 5,000 pesos. If one Carabao is defective, then vendor is liable sa kanyang warranty doon sa defective animal or defective Carabao only. In other words, si vendee is not entitled to return the sound Carabao unless he can show that he would not have purchased it without the defective one. Now, yung intention is presumed when the Carabaos bought are male and a female. But vendee may prove the contrary. As for example, si vendee has no present need or use for any of the 2 Carabaos. In any event, vendee can accept the defective Carabao and demand a proportionate reduction of the price na lang. So instead na ibalik niya yung Carabao sa vendor, vendee can actually request na lang for reduction of the price of the Carabao. So that would be all for Article 1572. So that would be all for my report under Chapter 4, Subsection 3, under Subsection 2, from Articles 1564 up until Article 1572. Again, my name is Jahan MACADATO, and thank you.